So here we are again, cold morning but the sun's out, White Springs in South Wales for the fourth round of the winter league. So hopefully I'll draw a good peg today, because the last couple of rounds it's not been great for me. Two sort of average but poor pegs, and then one decent peg when it was howling gales, so couldn't really fish it. So hopefully we'll have a better day today. The sun is shining, so hopefully it'll warm up a bit and we'll catch a few fish. See you later. Knowing peg 18 like I do, I was starting to fear the worst at this point, because an hour and 20 minutes in and I've not even had a single line bite or indication. And knowing peg 18 like I do, you need to catch carp and F1s early and late in the match to stand any chance of sort of getting a top 5 in the section. So I was really fearing the worst at this point. So after sort of an hour and 30 minutes, I decided that I had to go on my pole lines. I've left them for an hour and 30. I thought there might be a few skimmers sort of knocking about, because at this point I was blanking. I had nothing in the net. First drop on the pole, I managed to hook a skimmer. Good sort of size skimmer, sort of pound and a half skimmer, which is sort of the fish I was targeting on these pole lines. But it was becoming sort of clear that the wind was getting stronger and the gusts were sort of getting to the point where you were finding it very, very hard to sort of present your rig and keep your rig over the bait. And it was just becoming more and more impossible to fish. And I knew at this point that I probably made a mistake in feeding my skimmer lines at 14.5 metres. I probably should have fed them a little bit closer at like 13 or even 11.5, just to make things easier. The wind was starting to become a real pain now. It was gusting quite bad, and my decision to fish these skimmer lines longer has really become a bit of a mistake. I've had to fish heavier rigs just to keep the float still, like 4x16 power floats. I had to bulk it down, lay a bit of extra line on because of the tow, fish a longer lash between my pole tip and my float, and just to sort of get presentation right and get a few bites. I think if I fed it a little bit shorter, I'm positive I could have fished a bit more of a delicate rig, a lighter rig, and I probably could have presented it a lot better and caught more fish. So I think that this was sort of a big mistake on the day, and one that I'll learn from and I won't do again, hopefully. So I chucked a little mini method out with some method match dark and 2 dead red maggots on, just to sort of rest those pole lines because I've just refed them. And to my surprise, within sort of 5 or 6 minutes, it's gone round. And I've had my first F1 of the day. So I was hoping that with 2 hours left of this match, I was thinking if this could start sort of kicking off and I could get a few fish on this, maybe I could just sneak into that top 5. But I knew there was fish getting caught around the lake and I was miles behind at this stage. So I was confident that I might get a few more pulls, but I wasn't confident that it was going to go round enough to make a difference. And as it proved, the next sort of like 35, 40 minutes, I didn't really have any more liners or any more sort of bites on this. So it must have been a one-off. So with an hour and 15 minutes left to go, I made the decision that I was going to sort of fish out my corn line that I've been feeding at sort of 3/4 of the way over. Now I chucked on this throughout the day and not had a single bite or any liners or anything over it. But with an hour and 15 left, I thought, right, there's nothing happening, I got nothing to lose. I might as well just sort of fish this line now, be patient and hope I get a few bites. Now I've chucked bomb and corn over it with an hour and 15 to go. And it's gone round within sort of 8 to 10 minutes. And I've had an F1. And I thought maybe there's a few fish starting to feed. And maybe there's a few fish starting to come onto the feed because it's late in the match. And I knew that you had to catch carp and F1s early and late. Well, I never caught them early. So perhaps they're going to start feeding late. I was really hoping that it was going to get better for this last hour. But as sort of the match sort of went on a little bit, I had a couple more casts with bomb and corn and never really had an indication and never really had a bite and felt like there was no fish there at times. Really felt like it was just an odd fish that you were getting a bite off. So I kept chucking bomb and corn for a little bit longer, probably 20 minutes. Never really went round, never had an indication, never had any bites. So I switched to bread on the bomb, popped up over my corn line, just as a bit of a change really. Chucked it out. It almost didn't even hit the bottom, and it's gone round. And I'm into another F1. And I thought to myself at that point, there's got to be fish out there. There's got to be fish in the area, and there's got to be fish coming to that corn, but not willing to go down and pick the corn up. So perhaps the popped up bread off bottom about 8 inches, perhaps that's sort of giving them the confidence to feed, but they don't want to go on the bottom and feed. So I thought, right, I'll stick this out now and I'll be patient and I'll see what happens in this last sort of 40 minutes and see if I can get a few more bites. So I decided I was going to chuck the bomb and bread with 3 10mm discs on, and I was going to chuck that 8 inches off bottom, and I was going to fish it, and I was going to be patient. So I had 40 minutes left, and I thought, right, I'll be patient. I'll give it sort of 10 minutes a chuck. And if I can catch 4 more fish before the end, then that'll be a good sort of return for how my match has gone. Because I felt like I was just out of it, to be honest. So I thought, I'll just fish now for 4 fish, and hopefully that'll be enough to beat the people around me and get me a few points, even though I know for a fact I'm not going to be in the top 5. So that was my plan. So I chucked the old bomb and bread out, and I've been patient, and hopefully it'll go round. So at this stage of the match, it felt like there was a few more fish sort of coming into the peg and a few more fish willing to feed. That bomb and bread popped up like 8 inches, seemed to be the key to getting bites. I think there was a lot of fish sort of off bottom, and when I was firing that corn out, they were following it down and taking the bait before it hit the bottom, and the bait that was actually on the bottom, they wasn't willing to go down and eat on. That's why I wasn't getting bites on bomb and corn. So I think that bomb and bread popped up off the bottom was just giving me that sort of chance of catching those fish that were off bottom. And it was really sort of getting quite good. At this stage I was thinking perhaps I can catch 5 or 6 instead of 4, because it was sort of getting that good, and I had confidence that I was actually going to get bites. So before I was casting and there was no signs, and I wasn't that confident I was going to catch any fish at all. Now I felt like it was going to go around every cast. I felt like there was fish there. So the difference in like sort of an hour to another hour was quite remarkable, really. And most of the fish were F1s. I was hoping I could catch an odd carp as well, but most of the fish were F1s. But I was catching quite regular, and I thought, you know, if I could just keep this going, I could probably nick a few extra points. Although I'm not going to sort of trouble the leaders, I'm still going to nick a few extra points and get a little bit higher than what I thought I would be. So just kept plugging away, kept firing that corn out, kept chucking a bomb in and around the feed. I did sort of alter where I was chucking the bomb. I wasn't just chucking it down the same hole all the time. I was loose feeding corn. Sometimes I chuck in the middle of the feed. Sometimes I chuck around the outskirts of the feed, and you know, just sort of move it around a lot. But it was getting better, and it was sort of improving, and I felt quite confident that I was going to get a bite most casts, which is completely different to what it was at the start. So it just shows you that how swims can change, and how these fish sort of sometimes are in your swim but are not willing to feed. I think a lot of times this time of year, fish are in your swim and they're not willing to feed until that sort of last hour, and you've got to make the most of that. You've got to sort of feed your swim and make the most of those fish when they decide they want to open their mouths. Now, I did have a massive liner, and I chucked out and dropped it short. Just because this liner was so vicious, I thought that's got to be a big fish. So I dropped it short, probably a metre short of the feed. I was hoping to try and get this bite, and within sort of probably less than a minute, it's sort of landed. I've sunk the line, put the rod on the rest, and within sort of close to a minute, it's gone off the rest, and it's really, really violent. And I've lifted into it, and it feels like a big fish. I was thinking, if I could just get a decent fish now, it sort of puts me up towards the top half of the section. So I was really, really happy that it's gone round. You know, reading your swim when you're fishing a bomb is quite hard at times. You do get liners and you don't really know where they are in your swim. But by just sort of making these little changes and dropping it short or chucking it just past and things like that, sometimes you catch the extra fish that sort of make a difference in matches. And this fish here was quite a big one. It felt like a carp, and it was a really sort of bonus on the day. You know, when people are catching sort of fish between £1 and £2, and you latch into something a little bit bigger, you just got to take your time, make sure you get it in the net, and make sure it counts. Because so many of these matches are won and lost on a couple of pound, and points are won and lost on ounces. So you've got to make sure these fish are in the net when you hook them. So just take your time, really sort of, if it goes off running, give it a bit of line, and just make sure that that fish gets in the net, because you do not want to be losing these fish in the middle of winter, especially on barred pegs that you're not expected to do well off. If you do hook a better fish, you need to get it in and you need to make it count. So this, like I said, this fish was on 3 pieces of 10mm disc bread on that bomb again, like I said, but just chucked short of the feed this time. It turned out that it was a mirror of about 7 or 8 pounds. So it was a real good sort of fish to add to my net, really, and add a bit of weight to my net, because like I said, it's been really hard all match and I really needed to sort of kick on now, and this fish was a bit of a bonus on the day, especially when everyone around me was catching 2-pounders, so it's worth sort of 2 or 3 of their fish, and I was really happy that I got that fish, and that I felt that little bit of sort of reading the swim, having a line bite, taking a chance and dropping it shorter, I really felt that sort of give me that fish and give me that sort of extra little bit of edge that I don't think I would have had if I just carried on plugging away on the same line all the time. I had one last cast and it was like 3 minutes left of the match left to go, and I thought, oh, I wonder if this should just go round now, just go round just before the end and end on a fish. And lo and behold, with sort of a minute to go, the rod's jagged and dropped back, and I've lifted and I've had one on. So it was only an F1, but it's nice to sort of end the match and catch one on the whistle, which just sort of finishes the match off, because I've had such a bad start of the match that I thought this last sort of hour of the match, hour and 15, I felt like I fished really well. With the first half of the match, I felt like I didn't. I made a few mistakes on those pole lines, which have definitely like cost me some weight in fish. And looking back, I probably should have been a bit more patient on this bomb line as well. But to end the match on a fish is a good feeling. So we're just back from White Springs Winter League, and it's been horrendous today with the wind, really gusty. But you know, that's not the best sort of weather you want for fishing. Well, I've drawn peg 18. It's not a great peg. I think 16 and 18 has been sort of bottom half of the section every round, so it's not been a great area. But I did sort of think to myself, well, how am I going to get sort of top 5 in this section? So I've aimed to sort of fish for skimmers for the first half of the match, and then sort of F1s and carp late. But it's not really worked out that way. I made a mistake in fishing my skimmer lines too long, because when the wind got up, I couldn't really sort of present my bait there. So that's one big mistake I've made, and I'm big enough and ugly enough to admit it. And I did make a mistake there. I should have fed him a lot shorter. My sort of F1s and carp lines, which was sort of a little mini method to the reeds and bomb and bread, and I did loose feed a corn line sort of 3/4 way over, fished a bomb over that. They never really sort of materialised until the last sort of hour and a half of the match, where I did catch a few F1s and one sort of rogue carp. But it's all too late, and I've ended up with 32.12 £, which was joint 6th in the section, but agonisingly, it was just, you know, a couple of fish short of being in our top 5, and I thought being top 5 was probably a real good result from that area. So I've had 32.12. Mikey Williams have had £36. He's caught a couple of carp late as well, the same as me. And then Rob White have had £39 on peg 20. So it was only sort of a couple of fish away really, and I felt that making those mistakes on those skimmer lines, feeding them too far, that's cost me probably a couple of pound. And then being a bit more patient on my bomb lines would have probably got me another couple of fish. So I think I made a few mistakes there today, and I probably let sort of fourth in the section slip a bit. So I've done that a few times this league. I'm big enough and ugly enough to admit it when I make mistakes. And like I've said, you learn from your mistakes, and I've done it a few times in this league, and it's sort of cost me really. So hopefully I'll draw a few better pegs now in the next 2 rounds, and we'll catch a few fish, because drawing these average to poor pegs is just not good enough really. You're never going to win matches off pegs like that in the winter. It's notoriously peggy in the winter, and as is proven, these bad pegs just can't compete. So we'll go again. We'll go again and see what happens, and hopefully we'll draw a few better pegs. But I think, to be honest with you, my league is probably over now, so I'm just fishing to sort of win some money now over the next 2 rounds, because I think top 5 in the league is probably out of my reach. So, but like I said, 2 more rounds to go. We'll have a good go and see what happens. So if you enjoy watching these live matches, like I said, give my channel a like and subscribe, and I'll be doing a lot more of these, especially through the summer now, with my sort of big money qualifying campaigns and some White Acres festivals, and we're doing a lot more of these, and a few sort of tutorial videos as well. So give my channel a like and subscribe, and tight lines. We'll see you again.